Hello and welcome to Chapter 10, Motivation and Emotion. In this chapter, we will look at the theories of motivation, hunger, obesity, and eating disorders, motivation in everyday life, emotion in pursuit of happiness. So motivation is the force that moves people to behave, think, and feel as they do. It energizes, directs, and sustains behavior. The sustains behavior component of the definition is valuable in distinguishing motivated from unmotivated behaviors. Unmotivated behaviors are random, reflexive, or inadvertent. If an organism persists in a behavior despite obstacles, making a variety of attempts at the same goal in the same direction, then you have a good evidence the behavior is motivated. Piaget used this principle in evaluating infant object permanence. So looking at the evolutionary approach. An instinct is an innate biological pattern of behavior that is believed to be universal throughout a species. Usually, a sign stimulus in the environment sets the instinct into motion. Instincts may explain a great deal of non-human animal behavior. Instincts may also explain infant reflexes such as sucking on an object that is placed in the mouth. According to evolutionary psychologists, the human motivation for sex, aggression, achievement, and many other behaviors comes from our evolutionary past. However, other theories of motivation are needed to explain the complexity of these human behaviors. So drive reduction is another theory. It's important to note that these various theories of motivation are not competitors, so much as they are independent or mutually consistent accounts of different components or aspects of the human motivational repertoire. So in drive reduction theory, a drive is the state of tension that occurs because of some physiological need. A need is some deprivation that energizes the drive to eliminate or reduce the deprivation. Generally, psychologists think of needs as underlying our drives. Needs refer to a physiological state, while drive refers to a psychological state. The drive reduction theory explains that when a drive becomes stronger, we are motivated to reduce it. The goal behind drive reduction is homeostasis, which is the body's tendency to maintain equilibrium or balance. Most psychologists do not believe that drive reduction theory gives a proper framework for motivation because people often actually behave in ways that increase rather than reduce a drive. So looking at the optimum arousal theory, individuals sometimes seek stimulation, suggesting that they seek arousal in their lives. This theory suggests that there should be a level of arousal that is ideal for facilitating goal attainment. The Yerkes-Dodson law states that performance is best under conditions of moderate arousal. When people are at the low end, they feel too lethargic to perform the task, and at the high end, they may not be able to concentrate. The link between arousal and performance is one reason that individuals in many professions are trained to overlearn important procedures. Overlearning means learning to perform a task so well that it becomes automatic. Our hunger also influences our lives and motivates us. It is a physiological need that provides this motivation. We have gastric signals. The stomach contracts when an individual is hungry. In the early 20th century, researchers Cannon and Washburn believed that gastric activity was the basis for hunger. The stomach tells the brain not only how full it is, but also how much nutrients are present. However, stomach signals are not the only factors that affect hunger. The hormone cholecystokinin is produced in the upper small bowel. It helps start the digestion of food. It travels to the brain through the bloodstream to signal us to stop eating. Our blood chemistry also is involved in hunger. Glucose, which is blood sugar, is an important factor in hunger, probably because the brain is critically dependent on sugar for energy. The sugar receptors in the brain are triggered when sugar levels are low. Another set of sugar receptors is in the liver, which stores excess sugar and releases it into the blood when needed. The sugar receptors in the liver signal the brain when its sugar supply falls, and this signal can also make you hungry. Insulin, which is a hormone, plays a role in glucose control. Complex carbohydrates cause insulin to rise and fall gradually, while simple sugars cause insulin levels to rise and fall sharply. Leptin is a protein that is released by fat cells. It decreases food intake and increases energy expenditure. In humans, high concentrations of leptin have been linked with lower weight, less body fat, and weight loss in response to dieting. In terms of how our brain is linked to hunger, the lateral hypothalamus is involved in stimulating eating. If it is destroyed, even a starving animal will show no interest in food. The ventromedial hypothalamus is involved in reducing hunger and restricting eating. Research has shown that when this part of the brain is stimulated, the animal will stop eating. When the area is destroyed, the animal eats profusely and quickly becomes obese. In addition to these brain areas, neurotransmitters and neural circuits also function in regulating hunger. The hypothalamus receives signals from the pleasure pathways that use dopamine, endocannabinoids, and serotonin as messengers. 60% of Americans are overweight, and 1/3 of those are considered obese. It is projected that 86% of Americans will be overweight or obese by the year 2030. Being overweight or obese increases the risk for cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and other health problems. Overweight and obesity are global health problems. Some individuals inherit a tendency to be overweight. The set point is the weight maintained when no effort is made to gain or lose weight. The set point is in part determined by the number of adipose cells, which are fat cells stored in the body. When adipose fat cells are filled, a person does not get hungry. When you are of normal weight, you have about 10 to 20 billion fat cells. When you're obese, you have up to 100 billion fat cells. The more fat cells there are, the more you have to eat to feel satisfied. Less research has been conducted on the genetics of overeating per se, so much as on the genetics of metabolism, which in turn affects obesity independent of eating behavior. Fat cell theory also has its basis on metabolism rather than eating, except perhaps for the inference that past overeating can result in present low metabolism. In contrast, set point theory is specifically geared to the issue of overeating. Set point theory is sometimes compared to a fat thermostat. A corollary perspective is that if the hypothalamus is insensitive to leptin or whatever fat indicators the body uses, that is, if it is hard of hearing when it comes to detecting body fat, then the body will have to scream fat at the hypothalamus until the hypothalamus detects it and calculates that hunger is no longer necessary. In the past, the focus was on emotional state and external food cues. Emotional states and external stimuli are factors that influence what we eat and why we eat it. The human gustatory system and taste preferences developed at the same time when reliable food sources were scarce. Our earliest ancestors probably developed a preference for sweet foods because ripe fruits were easily accessible and were a concentrated source of sugar. Some of the things that are involved in how much we eat also are time and place, which increases eating. We associate places and times with meals. Research shows that smaller portions of snacks can be as satisfying as larger portions. Parents insisting that children finish what's on their plate leads people to eat automatically rather than based on their feelings of fullness. Segmenting food to signal the amount being consumed can help decrease mindless eating. Eating disorders are characterized by extreme disturbances in eating behavior, from eating very, very little to eating a great deal. Anorexia nervosa is an eating disorder that involves the constant pursuit of being thin through starvation. It involves an intense fear of gaining weight and a distorted body image. It is more common in females and typically begins in teenage years following dieting and a stressor. Most of those diagnosed with anorexia nervosa are white female adolescents or young adults from well-educated, middle or upper income families. High-achieving perfectionism, obsessive thoughts about weight, and compulsive exercise are involved. Some of the main characteristics for anorexia nervosa is that they are less than 85% of their normal weight. They have unsupported fear of gaining weight. They have a distorted body image, and they can have amenorrhea, which means that their menstruation cycle stops, which means their menstrual cycle ceases because of their low body weight. There are also medical dangers that are involved. They can grow a fine hair all over their body like a baby has at birth. Their bones thin, as well as their hair. There can be severe constipation and low blood pressure. Anorexia nervosa has the highest mortality rate of any psychological disorder. Bulimia nervosa is another eating disorder that involves the individual consistently following a binge and purge pattern. The bulimic goes on an eating binge and then purges by self-induced vomiting or the use of laxatives. Most bulimics and anorexics are preoccupied with food. They have a strong fear of becoming overweight and are depressed or anxious. It usually occurs within a normal weight range, so it's very difficult to detect. Most deal with feelings of disgust and shame and keep their behavior secret. It usually begins in late adolescence or early adulthood. It affects between 1 to 4% of young women. Some of the associated characteristics are that they are highly perfectionistic, there's low levels of self-efficacy, high standards, and very low confidence. So there are several factors that are looked at as possible causes for anorexia and bulimia. Sociocultural factors, such as the media, which has often glorified extreme thinness, is one explanation for the etiology of eating disorders. However, eating disorders occur in cultures that don't emphasize the ideal of thinness. Another area is family dysfunction. It increasingly has been thought to be involved in the appearance of eating disorders in adolescence. There's also biological underpinnings that are other factors that help psychologists understand the developments of eating disorders. Problems regulating serotonin is associated with both anorexia and bulimia. The disorders may change neural networks that then sustain the disordered pattern. Research has examined the interaction between social and biological factors to determine if genetics may have a role in the predisposition for having certain psychological characteristics, behaviors, and neurological chemical makeups, which ultimately influence the likelihood of certain people developing disorders, while others do not. Treatment for anorexia may include hospitalization, targeting weight gain, drug therapies, and psychotherapy. These are all interventions shown to be effective for anorexia and bulimia. Binge eating disorder is characterized by recurrent episodes of eating large quantities of food with an accompanying feeling of lack of control and not purging. Most individuals with binge eating disorder are overweight or obese. 8% of the obese have binge eating disorders. Binge eating disorder is considered the most common of all eating disorders. Neurological factors that include levels of dopamine related to the reward pathways of the brain, genetics, and stressful life events are some of the examined causes that contribute to the development of binge eating disorder. An fMRI study has also found that the areas of the brain involved in self-regulation and impulse control, especially the prefrontal cortex, showed diminished activity in individuals with this diagnosis. Treatment for this diagnosis consists of focusing on proper weight loss strategies as well as accompanied psychotherapy to manage other individual issues. Our needs also can be motivators. Maslow's hierarchy of needs state what the main needs are that we as humans possess. The main needs must be met in the following order: physiological, safety, love, and belongingness, esteem, and self-actualization. Self-actualization is the motivation to realize one's full potential as a human being. It can only be satisfied after the other needs have been met. Some people argue that the ordering of the needs in Maslow's hierarchy is debatable. Here is the pyramid with his hierarchy of needs. It starts with physiological needs, then safety and security, loving belongingness, esteem, and then self-actualization. And if you pass that, it's self-transcendence. Another theory is the self-determination theory by Deci and Ryan. Their theory states that organisms have 3 basic needs, which are competence, autonomy, and relatedness. It states that one of the most important aspects of healthy motivation is the sense of free choice in behavior. We do the things we do because we freely choose to do them. Organismic means that these needs are innate and are basic to human growth and functioning. Given the right context, individuals will grow and fulfill their needs. This theory is not a drive reduction. Competence occurs when individuals feel they are able to bring about desired outcomes and have the skills to do it. Relatedness is the need to engage in warm relations with other people. Research suggests that the need to belong is one of the strongest motivators. Autonomy is the sense of being in control of one's own life. It means feeling that one's behavior is self-motivated. Research suggests that progress on goals that serve these 3 organismic needs is related to well-being. Valuing more extrinsic qualities over organismic needs is associated with the lower levels of well-being. Intrinsic motivation is based on internal factors such as autonomy, competence, and relatedness, as well as curiosity, challenge, and fun. Extrinsic motivation involves external incentives such as doing something to gain rewards or to avoid punishments. Many psychologists believe that intrinsic motivation produces more positive outcomes. Intrinsic motivation often produces improved performance, persistence, creativity, and self-esteem. more so than extrinsic motivation. It is believed to be more likely to produce competent behavior and mastery. Self-regulation is the process by which an organism pursues important objectives. A key aspect of self-regulation is to get feedback about how the pursuit of goals is progressing. An individual will be more successful by setting goals which are specific, short-term, and moderately challenging. Short-term goals can provide a feeling of accomplishment, but attaching them to long-term goals can help an individual experience a sense of meaning. Planning how to reach a goal and monitoring progress toward the goal are critical points in achieving the goal. Pursuing long-term goals requires self-regulation. Delay of gratification is a key in understanding how individuals successfully pursue goals. Impulsivity and procrastination are associated with poor self-regulation. Impulsivity is the tendency to act rashly without thinking or planning. One who is impulsive also has trouble with temptation and sticking to goals. Procrastination means to intentionally put off actions on a goal. People who procrastinate score high on measures of impulsivity as well. Procrastination may be the byproduct of impulsivity and low executive function. Procrastination is not doing nothing. It involves doing a lot of things that are irrelevant to the goal. If we see a model as similar to ourselves, this motivates us to do likewise. If a model is extraordinary, we may become discouraged, thinking we can't reach that level. Research has shown that when exposed to outstanding work of others, there can be feelings of discouragement and inadequacy. To avoid negatively influencing people, it is important that they know that the work is an exception. It is also important that people have higher levels of happiness and personal satisfaction, because this decreases the likelihood that they will feel threatened by the exceptional work of others. Delay of gratification is putting off a pleasurable experience in the interest of some larger but later reward. Distraction can also help us to resist temptation. Mitchell conducted a study examining how children manage to delay gratification when being in a room alone with tempting marshmallow. His findings have implications for self-control. After studying those same children for many years, they concluded that the amount of time that the children were able to delay gratification predicted their academic performance in high school and college, and later success in their careers. Both motivation and emotion spur an individual into action. Self-regulation concepts suggest that motivation and emotions are closely linked. The term emotion is defined as a feeling or effect that can involve physiological arousal, conscious experience, and behavioral expression. The sympathetic nervous system is involved in the body's arousal. It is responsible for the body's immediate reaction to a stressor, sometimes called the fight or flight response. These changes prepare us for action. The parasympathetic nervous system calms the body after the threat has passed, promoting the process of maintenance and healing. Here you can see the functions of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. When the sympathetic nervous system is active, the body jumps into action. One way to measure arousal is through skin conductance level, which is the rise in the skin's electrical conductivity when sweat gland activity increases. The measurement of this electrical activity provides an index of arousal, which has been used in studies of emotion. Another measure of arousal is a polygraph or lie detector test. It monitors changes in the body such as heart rate, breathing, and skin conductance level. Research suggests that a polygraph errors about 50% of the time. One issue is that the heart rate, breathing, and skin conductance level can all increase for reasons other than lying. This led to the Employee Polygraph Protection Act in 1988. Also, fMRIs are better at detecting deception than polygraphs. The James-Lange theory states that emotion results from physiological states that are triggered by stimuli in the environment. Emotion occurs after the physiological reaction. Each emotion has a specific physiological set of changes. The Cannon-Bard theory states that emotion and physiological reactions occur simultaneously. Research suggests the involvement of neurotransmitters in emotional experiences. Dopamine and endorphins have been linked to positive emotions, for example. The amygdala includes circuits that are activated when an individual experiences positive and negative emotions. One of the negative emotions in which the amygdala plays a central role is fear. When the amygdala detects the presence of danger, it steps up its activity, commanding the brain's resources in an effort to protect the individual from harm. There are two pathways for fear. One is a more direct pathway from the thalamus to the amygdala. The direct pathway does not give specific details about the stimulus, but it's faster. The second is more an indirect pathway that goes from the thalamus through the sensory cortex to the amygdala. The amygdala is also involved in the emotional memories, which is important because once an individual has experienced something as dangerous, we do not have to relearn it. The neural system for emotions is linked to approaching and engaging with the world. Like happiness, pride, and anger, lives in the left side of the brain, while emotions associated with avoidance, like disgust and fear, are housed in the right. Cognitive theories of emotion hold the premise that emotions always have a cognitive component. This is a two-factor theory of emotion. Schachter and Singer's two-factor theory of emotion has two factors: physiological arousal and cognitive labeling. Research suggests that external cues are used when feelings are ambiguous and need explanation. Since our bodies often send ambiguous messages about what is going on in the world, we take those messages and look for explanations in our immediate circumstance. In the 1980s and 90s, there was a debate between Richard Lazarus and Robert Zajonc about which occurred first, the thinking or the emotion. Lazarus argued for the primacy effect, saying that cognitive activity was a precondition for emotion. Zajonc, on the other hand, argued that emotions are primary and an individual's thoughts are the result of the emotions. Both are essentially correct in that some emotions are instantaneous and do not involve cognitive appraisal, whereas others do. This is supported by the earlier description of direct and indirect brain pathways. Researchers studying emotion have recently been interested in looking at a person's ability to detect emotion from another person's facial expressions. Facial feedback hypothesis states that facial expressions can influence emotions as well as reflect them. Darwin believed that the facial expressions of humans are the same in all cultures and evolved from the expressions of animals. Research has shown that the facial expressions of emotion do not differ significantly from one culture to another. The display rules for emotions vary from one culture to the next. Display rules are the sociocultural standards that determine when, where, and how emotions should be expressed. Emoticons are used to express a variety of feelings when communicating through computer-mediated areas such as emails, blogs, and instant messages. These emoticons allow us to compensate for the loss of information from other expressive channels that are not apparent through electronic media communications. Culture plays a role in the use of emoticons and the display rules guiding how these expressions are used. Emoticons are a great demonstration of the importance that emotions play in our everyday communication with each other. Emotions can be summarized along various dimensions such as valence, arousal, and motivational quality. The valence of an emotion refers to whether it feels pleasant or unpleasant. Happiness, joy, pleasure, and contentment are positively valenced emotions. Sadness, anger, worry, and feeling upset are negatively valenced emotions. Emotions tend to go together based on balance. Positive emotions go together with other positive emotions, and negative emotions go together with other negative emotions. For example, someone who feels angry is likely to feel sad and worried. Negative affect refers to negative emotions such as anxiety, anger, guilt, and sadness. Positive affect refers to positive emotions such as joy, happiness, love, and interest. The arousal level of an emotion, also called activation level, is the degree to which the emotion is reflected in an individual being active, engaged, or excited versus passive, disengaged, or calm. Valence and arousal are independent dimensions used to describe emotions. The circumplex model of emotions is a graph that organizes emotions based on the dimensions of valence and arousal. Emotions can also be classified based on their relevance to the motivation to avoid punishers or to approach rewards. Negative emotions carry direct and immediate adaptive benefits in situations that threaten survival. Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build model of positive emotions states that the function of positive emotions lies in their effects on our attention and ability to build resources. The broaden and build model begins with the influence of positive emotions on cognitive processing. Positive emotions can serve as markers of well-being. They also improve coping. In some cases, they can undo lingering negative emotions. Resilience refers to the ability to bounce back from negative experiences and to be able to adapt and be flexible. Positive emotions play a role in the ability of resilient individuals to cope successfully with stress and life's challenges. Resilient individuals are zestful, optimistic, and energetic in their approach to life. They are distinguished by their tendency to experience positive emotion. They cultivate positive emotion in their lives through the use of humor. They show a kind of emotional wisdom, and that they capitalize on the capacity of positive emotions to reverse the stress of negative feelings. Recent research has been focusing on a way that positive emotions can reduce illness and promote health. The heritability estimates of happiness range from 50 to 80%. Research suggests there is a set point for happiness. That is a person's general level of happiness that exists when the individual is not trying to increase happiness, and it's influenced by genetic factors such as personal dispositions. The term hedonic treadmill captures the idea that any aspect of life that enhances our positive feelings is likely to do so for only a short time. We are likely to adapt quite rapidly to any change that might occur in our life that would influence our happiness. A second obstacle is that pursuing happiness for its own sake is not always done in a good manner, meaning that focusing on trying to be happier is not always a good way to be happier. Sonia Lyubomirsky suggests that we can enhance happiness by beginning with the intentional activities that enhance our positive emotions. Physical activities, kindness, positive self-reflection, and engaging in altruistic behavior are all shown to enhance our positive affect. Emmons and McCullough suggest that individuals maintain a gratitude journal to enhance happiness. Another strategy to increase happiness is to commit to the pursuit of personally meaningful goals. Goal pursuit provides structure that meaningfully relates to a chain of life events. So hopefully you will be able to describe the evolutionary drive reduction and optimum arousal theories of motivation, explain the physiological basis of hunger and the nature of eating behavior, characterize approaches to motivation in everyday life, summarize views of emotion, and discuss the role of emotions in physical and psychological health and wellness.